Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the Persian desert, back to a time when empires rose on horseback and survival meant packing like your life depended on it. Because, well, it kinda did. You're standing under a bruised pink sky, the last rays of sunlight slipping behind golden dunes that look soft until you try walking on them. Your boots crunch dry gravel as you approach a caravanserai, one of those roadside fortresses where weary traders, soldiers, and storytellers gather like flies around a date cake. Incense smoke curls from a brazier near the gate, blending with the stink of camel sweat and roasted onions. Somewhere, a lute twangs a lazy melody. You're not just passing through, you're joining the caravan. Now look, the desert isn't here for your comfort. You're about to camp where sand scorpions dance, where the sun gives you a slow roast by day and the night chills your kidneys into popsicles. You've got to pack smart, and we're doing it Persian style, and, spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't last 24 hours without half the stuff they brought along without even flinching. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is right now in the comments. Always curious who's staying up with me from where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey. Together, your feet stop just past the archway. The caravanserai is buzzing. Stalls loaded with stacked blankets, braided ropes, piles of goat cheese hard enough to chip a tooth. Merchants bark prices, grooms scrub camel hooves, and off in the
corner, a priest mutters to his fire pot like he's trying to argue with a candle.
You take a deep breath, dried cumin and sweat, your new signature scent. This is your launching point, your last taste of civilization before the dunes swallow you whole. And your companions? A mixed bag. One guy's from Ekbatana and talks with a drawl so thick it's basically sandpaper. There's a quiet woman from Susa who always sits near the fire, clutching a pouch that supposedly holds her grandfather's lucky teeth. You nod to them both, trying to act like you've done this, before a mule shrieks behind you. Not ideal. You head toward your sleeping nook, a woven mat on a slightly less pebbly patch of floor. Around you, people prep. Some grind barley into flour paste, others adjust stirrups, polish bronze buckles, or whisper prayers to Ahura Mazda. The whole place feels like a giant inhale before the breath hold of desert travel begins. You drop your satchel. Not too heavy because you're carrying it, but not too light either. Every item inside is the difference between epic Persian weekend adventure and tragic footnote in someone else's scroll. And no, you didn't just pack a spare, robe and hope for the best. You take inventory, eyes sweeping across your gear, a robe dyed with madder root, already laid out for the next day's journey. It's loose, breathable, and surprisingly flattering, desert chic, with a belt pouch that swings dramatically when you walk, unintentionally, but still. Your sandals are propped beside your mat. You made sure they were double-stitched. Persian.
Roads aren't kind to bad leather work. There's a chipped ceramic jug for water. Clay keeps it cooler, even if it does make the water taste like yesterday's soup. Someone across the courtyard starts playing a Comanche, a spindly, bowed string instrument that sounds like loneliness with a sprinkle of hope.
You kind of love it. Near the fire, a man with a massive beard retells a tale about getting lost in Dasht-e-Kavir and being saved by a pack of wild donkeys. Someone asks if the donkeys talked. He says they didn't need to, they judged him silently. You adjust your own gear, more out of habit than need. You've already double-checked the saddle straps, triple-checked the water skins. You did forget to test the latch on your bronze mirror case, though. Last time it swung open mid-ride, flashed. The sun and startled your mule so bad it practically moonwalked into a tamarisk tree. Lesson learned. A young boy runs by with a bundle of firewood and almost trips over a stray dog. The dog gives you a look like, "Can we not?" And even amid the chaos, you feel it, the shift. The emotional gravity of knowing that this place,
loud and full of shouting merchants and flickering torchlight, is the last time you'll see stone walls for a while.
The desert ahead is vast, indifferent, and beautiful in a way that only things trying to kill you can be. Historians still argue whether caravanserais like this were more about safety, trade, or spiritual community. In reality, they were probably all three. A pit stop where politics, prayer, and pickpocketing mixed freely under the same stars. One fringe theory even suggests that some caravanserais were used for coded information drops, spies passing notes through secret compartments. In bread loaves, you look at your own hard biscuit and wonder, message or just old. You lie back on your mat, staring up at the open night sky. No roof, just stars, a lot of stars. One shooting streak, then another. You can't name any constellations, but that one does kind of look like a camel flipping you off. Tomorrow, you ride.
Not in some storybook sense either. Your thighs are going to ache, your lips will dry out, and your fingernails will somehow collect enough sand to start a private dune. Still you grin, because there's something exhilarating about knowing you're
setting out where few dare to go, packed like a prince, riding like a poet, and ready for the kind of weekend where you might just find a new self, or at least a very cool rock. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the world's already glowing in that eerie pre-dawn blue, the kind of light that makes everything look like it's underwater. You roll up your mat with numb fingers, the night's cold still clinging to your bones like a clingy ex. Around you, others stir, groaning softly as joints protest another day of mule saddle living. Your pack is right where you left it, tucked beneath a ledge near the wall. You check it again because Persian desert travel isn't just about the boldness, it's about the prep. And the first real item of business, your food. Because even an empire builder gets cranky without breakfast. You fish out a cloth-wrapped bundle from your satchel and unfold it slowly. Inside, a cluster of dried dates, a wedge of hard sheep cheese, and a dense wheat cake that has all the charm and chew of a doorstop. But here's the magic. These humble things are perfect travel food. Dates offer that quick sugar hit when your energy's tanking. The cheese has been smoked until it could probably survive a minor apocalypse. And the bread, tough but filling, just the way the ancients liked it. You sprinkle a pinch of salt. Yes, you packed salt. You're not a savage. Onto the cheese and take a bite. It squeaks between your teeth. Deliciously awful. Persians knew how to fuel a journey. Food wasn't just calories. It was calculated survival. And you, little desert trekker, are playing it old school. In fact, some sources suggest that elite travelers even brought tiny jars of pomegranate molasses to drizzle on their cakes or dates. It was the ancient equivalent of hot sauce. A little splash makes everything better. You don't have any. Someone else probably does, and they're guarding it like a dragon horde. As the camp begins to shift into motion, you see a man carefully unpacking what looks like a stack of folded cloth. Not spare tunics, napkins, linen napkins, embroidered. You blink. The man eats his dried apricots with the care of a noble on a marble terrace. You've got crumbs in your beard? It's true, Persian travelers, even the rugged ones, had flair. There's even evidence of portable spice kits, tiny pouches of cinnamon, cardamom, and dried mint for steeping in water or dusting over meals. Travel, sure, but no one said flavor had to suffer. You poke around in your pouch until your fingers brush the dried mint you stashed at the last market. You knew it had come in handy. Someone shouts, Not in alarm, just your caravan leader yelling about saddling up. You glance at your pack. You know what's next. Water. Without it, you're toast, or rather toast before it's toasted. You reach for your water skins, 2 of them, made from sheep hide and sealed with beeswax. They smell weird, they always do, but they work. Persians often used ceramic jars and goatskin bags for water. The trick was keeping it cool and not growing slime. You remember to swish out your main flask, just like that one trader taught you. Swirl a pebble in the water, rinse, repeat. It's like ancient Brita, but noisier. One quirky thing you're proud of? The waxed cloth wrapper you keep soaked in. Cool water and wrap around your jug before hanging it from the shaded side of your saddle. It actually works. Evaporative cooling. You're basically hacking physics like a 5th century MacGyver. Historians still argue whether these methods were widespread among everyday folks or more reserved for military and elite caravans. But either way, if it works, and you're staying hydrated with style. Nearby, one of the caravan kids dumps out a sack of what you first think are smooth rocks. Nope, they're chickpeas, dried and roasted. Instant snack, zero fuss. You palm a few after making an eye contact deal with him. He shrugs, takes one of your dates in return. Fair trade. Chickpeas were the chips of the ancient world. Crunchy, salty, portable. Plus, they're a protein hit. Soldiers used to carry little pouches of them, along with other humble goodies like dried figs, walnuts, and even the occasional honey ball. Basically, proto-energy bites. You rise to your feet, brushing crumbs off your robe. Around
You others are gearing up.
Straps pulled tight, fabrics wrapped around heads, even a bit of face paint. Yep. Travelers in ancient Persia sometimes dabbed on protective kohl around the eyes to cut glare and ward off infections. Think desert eyeliner, equal parts fashion and function. You apply your own using a sliver of bronze mirror tucked into your satchel. It's not vanity, it's survival.
And okay, a little vanity. Out of the corner of your eye, you catch a camel being brought forward. Yes, you've got a camel. You tried the mule last time. Great personality, terrible shock absorption. This beast is surly, tall, and named.
Something like Shug or Murh. You're still not sure. But he tolerates you, and that's enough. Before mounting, you do one last gear check. It's a Persian habit you've picked up. Is the pouch of dried rose petals intact?
Yes, weird item, but sprinkle a few on sleeping mats and boom, insta-fresh, desert sweet. Is your string of dried garlic cloves still dangling off the saddle horn? Yep, keeps away flies, and maybe evil spirits. Either way, functional. One traveller.
Nearby chuckles as he smears his lips with a glossy balm. Not just a luxury, it's beeswax mixed with sesame oil to keep lips from splitting in the brutal sun. You follow suit. There's nothing heroic about bleeding lips. It's nearly time to move out. Your beast huffs. The group assembles. Sand shifts underfoot as dozens of hooves and feet crunch together. The priest with the fire pot mutters one last prayer, his beard blowing sideways in a breeze like it's made of old paintbrushes. You can't make out the words, but you nod anyway, and, finally, you swing into the saddle. Your pack rests behind you, balanced, strapped, and ready.
Inside it, your food, your water, your strange little luxuries. You're not just hauling supplies, you're carrying your lifeline. And if you forgot anything, well, you'll either improvise or regret it somewhere between the buzzard and mirage.
Zones. You lean forward in the saddle just slightly, shifting your weight so the leather straps don't carve fresh regret into your thighs. Shug or Murh, still unclear, grunts and begins that signature camel sway. Like a ship slowly pushing off from harbour, Your caravan stretches into movement, a sun-bleached parade of wool, leather, and hopeful travelers. The desert opens before you, like a living scroll, and every step writes a new sentence. But before you vanish into sand dunes and mirages, let's talk about something crucial: your clothes. Because in ancient Persia, what you wore wasn't just about status. It could mean the difference between survival and becoming a cautionary tale. You're layered, and not by accident. The outer robe you've wrapped around your body is made from light, breathable wool. Yes, wool. It sounds absurd in the heat, but here's the trick. It insulates. It traps cooler air close to your skin and blocks out the sun like a personal
awning. Underneath, a tunic of linen breathes with every gust of desert wind.
Persians weren't into sweating profusely unless it was in the bathhouse. And then there's your sash, a wide, brightly dyed band of fabric wrapped tight around your waist, not just decorative. Inside it, you've tucked a bone-handled utility: knife, a sewing needle in a reed case, and a small pouch of frankincense resin. Why frankincense? 1. The scent masks the camel funk. 2. Burn a pinch during camp and you'll sleep like royalty, or hallucinate. Either way, entertaining. You shift your head covering, a tightly wound scarf known as a chafiyeh. It covers your neck, ears, and the top of your shoulders, prime targets for sunburn or, worse, sandblasting. Some travelers go full wraparound, with an extra cloth across the mouth and nose, especially when the wind kicks up. You haven't reached that level yet. Soon. Historians still argue whether certain patterns or dyes indicated tribal affiliations or trade roles. Were stripes for couriers? Was blue a merchant thing? No one agrees. But your scarf's a muddy blend of earth tones, not flashy, but it hides dirt, which is key when your daily fashion show is sand, more sand, and possibly scorpions. Now about those shoes. Your sandals aren't the delicate kind you'd wear to an imperial banquet. They're thick-soled, leather-strapped tanks for your feet. The Persians were pioneers of practicality here, and some even wore shoes that wrapped halfway up the calf to keep out grit. Yours are laced tightly, worn smooth from countless miles, and padded with wool felt inserts. A little luxury trick you learned from a caravan master named Varden, who once crossed the Dasht-e-Kavir with only one toenail left. "Never again," he said, as he showed you how to line your soles. As the sun climbs, you pull a small vial from your pouch and dab a bit of oil on your face. Almond mixed with sesame. Again, it's not vanity, it's SPF, ancient style. The oil protects your skin, and with any luck, you won't end up looking like a baked beet by midday. Plus, it smells faintly of sweetbread. You take that as a win, and yes, you brought a comb, a tiny bronze one with half its teeth missing. You use it every morning while pretending it's still fully functional. There's an odd comfort in grooming out the dust, even when there's no mirror. Cleanliness mattered, even out here. Persians were early adopters of look good, feel good, don't die of lice. A loud whistle snaps you out of your grooming. Meditation. One of the camel drivers is shouting something about loose gear. You glance down, not yours, thankfully. But it's a reminder to check everything again. Your robe's hem is tucked. Your head wrap isn't flapping. Your knife is secure. Because let's face it, one stray wind gust and you're chasing your turban across the desert like a cartoon. You ride in relative silence for the next stretch. The rhythm of hooves, the occasional bark from the herding dogs darting between the pack animals, the jingling of copper charms some travelers tie to their camels for good luck. One woman nearby has bells sewn into the hem of her robe, not a Fashion statement but a warning system. Scorpions apparently hate the noise. Quirky, but possibly brilliant. You reach down and adjust the pouch tied to your belt. Inside it, your emergency stash, a chunk of beeswax, a needle and thread, a folded scrap of waxed linen, and a tiny vial of some herbal mixture that tastes like regret, but helps with stomach upset. You made it yourself after that unfortunate date with meat. Incident in Ray. You don't talk about Ray. Ahead, the terrain shifts. What was flat becomes ripple. Sand dunes rise like frozen waves, and the sun paints everything with an orange glaze. Time to wrap up tighter. You watch a fellow traveler roll down her sleeve and tuck in her wrists. She's smart. Sunburn sneaks up on you, especially in the joints. Another guy adjusts his head wrap to form makeshift goggles using scraps of polished quartz. They're strung with thread and sit like steampunk eyewear across his nose. Not comfortable, but surprisingly effective. Eye protection was a real thing. Coal helped, but some went next level. You're tempted. Historians still argue whether items like these were common or rare one-offs. Were quartz goggles widespread? Did travelers really use mirrored bronze to reflect glare? You don't know for sure, but in this light, you'd try just about anything not to go snowblind from the sand. By midday, the caravan pauses. Time for a break. A few palm fronds are set up for shade. Barely. You dismount slowly, stretching muscles that feel like they've been wrapped in salt and left to dry. Shug lets out a disgusted groan and plops down, unconcerned, with grace. You find a spot, unwrap your scarf, and start shaking out the sand. There's a fine layer of it on everything. Your teeth, your scalp, your soul. You take a deep breath. The sun's intense, but so is the quiet. Out here, with your desert kit and layered clothes, you're not just pretending to be Persian. You are Persian, for a weekend at least. And it's both miserable and kind of wonderful. Somewhere behind you, someone sings softly in an old dialect you barely understand, a tune for the road, or maybe just a complaint in melodic form. Either way, you hum along. The camels grunt back. To life after the break, spurred on by whistles and claps from their handlers. You haul yourself up again, not gracefully, and resume your place in the slow-moving ribbon of heat-struck travelers winding through the dunes. Now that you've gotten your clothing sorted and secured, let's turn to the next great question. What's in your bag? Because if you think weekend travel is just stuffing a tunic into a satchel and calling it a day, welcome to ancient Persia, where packing for the desert is half science, half superstition, and fully exhausting. Your saddlebag, tanned goatskin, with bronze buckles and a flap that always seems slightly crooked, rests against the camel's flank. You reach over and give it a pat. Inside is your curated survival starter pack, tested by time and tweaked with personal flair. First up, dried food, lots of it. Persians were desert realists, and every journey began with protein, carbs, and just a sprinkle of dried despair. You packed salted lamb jerky, thin as parchment, and just chewy enough to make your jaw weep. Next to it, flat rounds of barley bread baked rock hard so they last for days. You soften them in water, if you have water. Otherwise, it's more like chewing on ambition. Tucked between these is your favorite, pomegranate leather. Think ancient. Fruit roll-up, but denser, sour-sweet, and speckled with crushed pistachios. You ration it like treasure. Also in the food section, a sealed jar of date paste, a small satchel of dried white mulberries, and, because you're not a fool, salt. Lots of it, not just for taste, but to replace what the desert bleeds out of you. And yes, water, the eternal obsession. You carry 2 skin flasks slung under your saddle, sewn tight from sheep hide. They sweat faintly, dampening the fabric around them, and every drop inside is gold. Historians still argue whether ancient Persian caravans relied more
On pre-filled skins or refilling from known oasis points. You
do both and still feel like it's not enough. To preserve it, you've also packed something weird. A length of hollow reed, sealed at both ends with beeswax, hiding a chunk of dried cactus pulp. It soaks up moisture from the air, which sounds like snake oil until it saves you once. A fringe technique passed from a desert guide named Farrokh, who swore by it and claimed he could find water by licking rocks. You haven't tested that part yet. In the pouch near your belt, you've got your fire gear. No lighters or matches here. A flint shard wrapped in leather, a small iron striker, and a bundle of char cloth, linen pre-burned until it catches the faintest spark. You learn the hard way that desert nights drop colder than a tax collector's heart. Fire is comfort. Fire is life. Also, it keeps sandcats out of your tent, maybe. Which brings us to your tent. Or rather, your bit of tent. You didn't pack the whole luxury suite. Just a piece. A 2-pole lean-to setup made from goat wool. It's dark, scratchy, and just big enough to crouch under like a suspicious tortoise. But it keeps the wind off and offers shade during the mid-afternoon scorch. Next, tools. You've got a small bronze eating knife, decorative, but sharp enough. A 2-prong wooden fork with 1 splintered tine. A tiny hand shovel carved from bone. It's mainly for latrine duty, but don't judge. Sand can only cover so much. You also carry a foldable hook for lifting pots over fire, and a copper cup engraved with birds that you pretend is fancy, though it was probably mass-produced in Susa. Inside a secret pouch, stitched into the lining of your bag like a spy's hideaway, you keep what you call the just-in-case bundle. A waxed thread bracelet knotted with charms, a tiny turquoise bead, a sliver of gazelle horn, a bit of silk dyed blue. Not for fashion. These are for luck, or love, or both, depends on who you ask. Some say the turquoise protects against scorpion bites. Others say it makes you more desirable, which is debatable considering you haven't bathed since Thursday. Historians still debate how widely magic charms were used by regular travelers versus the wealthy elite. Some argue they were a sign of spiritual seriousness. Others think they were just cool-looking souvenirs. Either way, you wouldn't dream of leaving yours behind. Not after that thunderstorm outside Shiraz when you swore the bead glowed. Probably lightning, but let's not ruin the vibe. You rummage deeper and pull out a folded cloth, dyed indigo, embroidered in clumsy spirals. Your prayer mat. In Persia, even nomads found time for devotion. When sunset paints the sky blood red, you'll lay it out face west and try not to weep when the sand bites your knees. You also packed a small scroll, tightly rolled and sealed in a leather tube. Inside a poem. Not a map. Not instructions. Just a poem, handwritten by someone who mattered once, when the stars were less cruel. You haven't read it in weeks, but just knowing it's there makes the road feel shorter. Finally, tucked between your food and gear, you keep a stitched cloth pouch that rustles like secrets. Inside, dried rose petals, lavender sprigs, and crushed myrrh. A traveler's scent bomb. Why? Because when you lie awake under a flickering sky, smelling like camel and defeat, 1 breath of roses makes you feel almost human. You sigh, re-secure the flap, and lean back. Everything you own for the weekend is in that bag. Nothing fancy. Nothing you couldn't live without, but everything that might help you stay alive. And maybe, if you're lucky, stay. A little you, as the wind picks up again, you tighten the knot on your head wrap. Sand rasps across the saddle. Shuk groans. You think about your next break. Another snack. Maybe a rose petal under your nose. Maybe that poem. And through it all, you carry the desert. The desert is not empty. Sure, that's what it looks like. At first, just miles of ripple-backed dunes, pale like powdered gold, stretching beyond where your eyes can squint. But the longer you ride, the more you notice. A flicker of movement, a whisper of shadow, something half buried blinking back at you. The desert's alive, and not just with creeping things. You're about to meet fellow travelers. See, in ancient
Persia, no one wandered the sands alone unless they were foolish, heartbroken, or cursed. You're part of a caravan, which means you've got company.
And not the easygoing kind. Ahead of you, the caravan stretches out like an accidental parade, a jumble of people, animals, and cargo that would give any modern customs officer a heart attack. There are spice traders from the Zagros foothills, their camels perfumed with cardamom and saffron sacks swaying like sleepy hammocks. There's a caravan of silk merchants from Sogdiana, their brightly dyed cloths fluttering in the wind like overconfident flags. You ride beside a father-son pair from Persepolis who transport glazed pottery. The son is always singing, off-key, and the father is always shushing him like it's a sacred duty. You've never seen either smile. Still, they share their water sometimes, and that counts for a lot out here. Behind you clomps a grumpy old priest who smells faintly of onions and has strong opinions about which gods protect travelers. Spoiler. It's all of them according to him. He carries a bundle of incense and a wooden idol shaped like a lion's paw. When the sand gets rough, he mutters in old Elamite, then glares at you like it's your fault if the wheels fall off someone's cart. Historians still argue whether caravans like yours were mostly organized by merchants or by temple groups. Some suggest that large-scale movement required divine blessing. Others say it was pure commerce, and the gods just rode along for dramatic effect. You pass a family of nomads leading goats, the mother balancing a jar of milk on her head like
Is made of feathers. Her son runs beside her, barefoot, laughing in a language you
don't know. They nod at you and you nod back because words aren't always necessary in the sand. And oh, the animals. Camels, yes, those desert submarines with sour tempers and freakishly long eyelashes, but also donkeys with fur like dusted velvet, oxen dragging wheeled carts of unknown goods, and once, just once, a leopard on a leash. Its handler wore silk robes and the expression of someone deeply tired of answering questions like, "Is that real?" You talk to some of them. The people, not the leopard. You trade stories, lies, and dried apricots. You swap tips about where the dunes get treacherous and which stars are actually reliable for navigation. Someone swears the third star in Orion's belt is cursed and causes diarrhea. You nod politely and vow to never look at Orion again. Not everyone talks, though. Some keep to themselves. There's a woman riding a black mule with a veil drawn tightly across her face. She carries
no bags, her hands are ink-stained. Rumors say she's a poet or an assassin. Maybe both. You catch her watching you once, just a glance. Then her eyes shift to the horizon like you're already behind her. You're not sure whether to feel threatened or flattered. Then there's the caravan leader. You only know his name because everyone shouts it when things go wrong. Rostam.
big guy, beard like a storm cloud, voice like falling boulders. He rides at the front, always. His armor is leather, but stitched with bronze studs in the shape of lion's claws. a walking warning. When he tells the group to stop, people don't.
Ask why, they just stop. You've heard stories that he once punched a bandit so hard the man lost the memory of his own name, that he buried a scorpion in a pouch of gold as a lesson in greed, that he hasn't slept under a roof since the last
king died. You don't know if any of it's true, but you'd bet a handful of saffron he's got his own personal ghost. So this is your travelling circus, a mesh of faces, beasts, legends and trades, all moving under the same brutal sun. You're strangers mostly. But out here, even strangers share shade, share stories, and if things go wrong, share the same shallow grave. That thought keeps things civil. You also learn the rules fast. 1. Don't ride too close to the spice camels unless you want to. Smell like cumin for days. 2. Never touch someone else's water flask without asking, unless you're ready to duel with tent stakes. 3. If someone yells ghoul, drop what you're doing and run. Historians still debate how common actual bandit attacks were in Persian deserts. Some claim they were rare and overblown by later storytellers. Others point to clay tablets listing exact inventories of lost goods and think, nah, it was probably chaos out here. Bandits or not, the sun is always the greater threat. By midday, everyone is silent, focused on endurance. Even the singing pottery boy goes quiet. The air bends, shimmering in illusion. Your breath feels like boiled cloth. One trader wraps wet fabric around his wrists and mutters about a dream where sand turned to glass. You're not sure if it's a metaphor or a prophecy. Still, it's not all doom and dehydration. At night, when the camp circles the fire, people relax. Someone plays a sitar. A trader tells a joke about a goat and a tax collector. Even the priest laughs, though he adds a warning about mocking tax collectors who are clearly protected by demons. You sit beside a spice merchant who offers you a slice of candied ginger, then grins as you cough and weep. She slaps your back like a drum and tells you your sinuses will thank her tomorrow. These moments, odd, warm, unexpected, remind you that humanity is always there, even buried beneath sand and survival. No matter how far you travel, people still tell stories, share sweets, and laugh at someone else's misfortune. Tonight, it's your turn, and you'll remember this later, long after the desert spits you out again, how it felt to be a part of something dusty and temporary and real. The sun doesn't rise in the desert, it erupts. It blazes up from the horizon like it's been waiting all night to burn your eyebrows off. No gentle golden hour here, no warm beams slipping between curtains. Out here, it's heat, light, and regret, immediately. And you're up before it, squatting in the grit, chewing yesterday's bread, and praying your boots didn't become a scorpion condo overnight. You stretch, bones crackling like dry reeds, and begin the morning ritual of packing. Again, every item must go back into its assigned place. Leather water skins are checked for leaks, food bundles are tightened, the grain for the animals is divvied up like miser's gold. Your saddle blanket, still faintly damp with dew, gets a quick shake, and, sure enough, a beetle the size of a grape hits the ground with a thud. You salute it, respect the locals. Today's leg of the journey is short, only half a day to the next known spring, but that doesn't mean it'll be easy. Here's something historians do agree on. Ancient Persians were ridiculously meticulous about route planning, the royal road, the desert outposts, the way stations. They weren't just impressive, they were necessary. Knowing where the next drinkable water source was located could mean the difference between safe passage and being preserved for future archaeologists. And today, your entire caravan is running off that knowledge. You ride beside one of the old map bearers now. He's not an official cartographer per se, those were mostly royal jobs, but he's a keeper of oral maps. He speaks in sand curves and star positions, describes valleys like they're people, and can sketch a whole journey using just a stick and a patch of dust. He doesn't smile often, but when he does, his teeth are stained red from chewing beetle. 3 hours, he says. Then we see the teeth. You frown. Teeth? He nods. The rocks look like broken teeth. When you see those, water is near. Sure enough, the trail ahead narrows and the dunes give way to a cracked plain of scattered boulders. Some are sharp and pale, standing upright in clusters like a giant's molars. It's both creepy and oddly comforting, signs that you're getting closer to your next lifeline. But of course, nothing in the desert is free. As you push forward, a sudden wind kicks up. Sand whips across the caravan like it's trying to exfoliate everyone into oblivion. You wrap a cotton scarf around your face, shielding your mouth and eyes. The air tastes like flint and sunburn. Someone yells. One of the carts, an overloaded ox, pulled one, has tipped. The pots inside it spill, rolling and smashing against the stone. The ox groans in protest as people scramble to help. The priest tries to chant a blessing over the mess, but is mostly ignored. You jump in to lift a broken axle. It snaps in your
hands like dry bread. You'll lose a few hours fixing this. While the caravan repairs the cart, you find shade behind a boulder shaped like a serpent's head.
It's cool, relatively. You sip from your skin and chew on a lump of dried fig that tastes like tree bark, with a sugar problem. Near you, the poet-assassin woman rests. She's sketching lines in the dust with a bone. You watch her hand move, graceful, precise, almost like calligraphy. She notices you watching and says, without looking up, "Do you know the word for thirst in Old Persian?" You don't. She whispers it. Tars. The word sounds like a curse. You believe it is. Historians still argue whether women in Persian caravans held roles beyond domestic ones. Some claim they were merely passengers, wives, daughters, servants. Others point to records of female landowners, traders, and even military leaders. Whoever she is, this woman is definitely not just along for the ride. The cart is repaired eventually. The wheel is a little wobbly, but that's fine. Nothing rolls straight in the desert anyway. You resume your journey and soon, there it is. Water. It's not much. A shallow spring, rimmed with stone, bubbling gently like it's embarrassed to be seen. But to you, it's paradise. The camels grunt in approval, the goats start kicking up dust, and even the priest kisses his idol. You wait. Your turn. Water is rationed, even here. First, the animals, then the old, then everyone else. When your moment comes, you kneel, dip your fingers in, and let the coolness slide over your skin. You resist the urge to plunge your whole face in, barely. Instead, you splash a little on your neck and arms. Your skin hisses with delight. Nearby, a group of traders is preparing a tea. Yes, tea in the middle of a sun-blasted desert. The irony is not lost on you. They toss dried herbs into a pot over a brazier and invite you to share a cup. The taste is bitter, smoky, and oddly floral. You pretend to love it. They nod approvingly. Then someone starts singing again. Not the pottery boy, this time it's an old woman with a voice like cracked leather. The song is slow, ancient, and filled with syllables you don't understand. But you don't need to. It rolls over the group like a spell. The poet assassin. Woman hums along. You shiver, not from cold, from the weird, beautiful feeling that somehow this moment has happened before and will happen again. Different people, same spring. As the sun begins its descent, mercifully, you start to set up the night camp. Tents are raised, fires lit, there's a smell of grilled onion and cumin. Somewhere, someone plays a flute made of bone. You look up. The sky is deepening to violet, stars beginning to freckle the void. You spot Orion. You do not look at the third star, it's here, as night settles in and firelight flickers on tired faces, that you realize something important. Survival isn't just about packing well, it's about people. The ones who sing when you can't. The ones who share tea and songs and warnings about cursed stars. The ones who, for reasons you'll never understand, choose to walk the desert with you. And in this moment, surrounded by strangers who feel a little less strange, you think, maybe you'll make it. Maybe. There's a certain silence that falls after dusk in the desert. Not the kind that's peaceful. No, not quite. It's more like the world holding its breath, just for a minute. The fire crackles, someone's wheezing softly in sleep, and the wind forgets to blow. You sit cross-legged near your tent, squinting into the shadows and thinking about your next move. 'Cause tonight's not just for rest, it's for decisions. A weekend journey like this always has its crossroads. You've stocked up, walked, sweated, maybe even cried into your scarf a little. Now it's time to recalibrate. What gets packed differently tomorrow? What do you not need? And what do you wish you had? The desert is a brutal teacher, and you're a slightly blistered student. Let's start with your feet. Your sandals, hand-stitched with camel leather, were a decent choice, but after a few hours of heat and sand, your toes feel like roasted dates. You make a note to ask the cobbler, yes, there's a cobbler in your caravan, and yes, he gossips more than he works about felt inserts. They were a thing even back then. Historians have found evidence that ancient Persian travelers sometimes lined their sandals with felt or wool scraps for added comfort and heat protection. Was it stylish? No. Was it smart? Very. Then there's your gear bag. Heavy. Too heavy. You regret packing 3 varieties of pickled turnip, but you were trying to impress someone, okay? So, tonight is inventory night. You open your travel sack and lay everything out on a worn wool mat. The priest gives you side-eye. You are inviting the desert spirits to steal your possessions, he says, half serious. You nod politely and keep unpacking. Let's take stock. Water skins, still cool, still sealed tight. Bone comb, necessary. Sand gets everywhere. Bronze mirror, narcissism or survival tool, depends on who you ask. Fire starting kit, flint, steel dried lichen. Spare tunic, still soaked with that accidental camel spit incident. Ink scroll and stylus, barely used, but they make you feel like a philosopher. Sweet resin tablets, your last little luxury. There's also a small leather pouch filled with powder, spikenard mixed with myrrh. Expensive, meant for scenting clothes or distracting from the smell of travel-induced despair. You rub a bit on your wrists. Instantly, you smell like a noble house library and a spice market had a well-mannered baby. A bit away from your camp, the guards take shifts at watch. They're a mixed crew, one's ex-military, another's a former bandit turned legit, maybe, and the third is a woman who never speaks, only nods. She sharpens her blade on a whetstone that sings like a cricket. You trust them, mostly. The merchant who joined 2 days ago has been asking too many questions. About the route. About your gear. About who's carrying what. You're not paranoid, just desert cautious. There's an old saying, the sand hears more than it tells, meaning someone's always listening even when your mouth is closed. Speaking of sayings, you overhear the old storyteller reciting a classic to the children near his fire. In the days before kings, the desert was ruled by silence. Then a
Man came, carrying a flask of stars and a carpet woven from moonlight. He traded them for a camel and got lost in the dunes, but the stars still glow under the sand, waiting to be found. The children ask if it's true.
He just smiles and throws a fig pit into the fire. Pop. Historians still argue whether Persian oral tradition counted as history or just entertainment. But in the desert, it doesn't matter. Stories are survival. They warn, they teach, and they remind you that there's always been someone before you, walking the same path, cursing the same sand in their underpants. You glance across the camp. The poet-assassin is talking with the map-bearer now. They're huddled close, whispering, plotting, flirting, planning a murder haiku. Hard to say, your stomach growls. Dinner tonight was flatbread baked on hot rocks, seasoned with sesame and survival. You chew thoughtfully, watching the stars multiply like gods, shaking glitter across the sky. One of your favorite quirks of Persian travel, sky charts. Some caravans carried them, not in scroll form but embroidered into cloth or even woven into saddle blankets. Little markers indicating major constellations and their seasonal positions. Your group's not fancy enough for that, but the priest does trace orbits with his finger on his palm, muttering lunar cycles like their gossip. And here's something strange. Tonight, the air feels heavier, like something's coming. You feel it in your throat, a kind of static buzz, a storm, a trick of the brain, or just nerves after a long day. Hard to say. You reach for your cloak and wrap it tighter, even though the temperature hasn't dropped much. Beside you, a lizard scurries across your mat. You consider keeping it as a pet. Then it poops and vanishes. Decision made. You remember the first thing your caravan leader told you back in the city. Pack light, but pack smart. At the time, you thought he meant efficient. But maybe he meant pack for the you that will exist after 3 days in the desert. Because that version of you, the sunburnt, sand-chafed, emotionally unstable you, has very different priorities. You lay back, staring at the sky. Your mat is lumpy. Your head pillow is a rolled-up tunic that smells like old soup. But for some reason, this feels right, like you're exactly where you're supposed to be. A fire pops, someone snores, a camel farts with unholy intensity. You smile. Tomorrow, you repack differently. Smarter, lighter, maybe with less turnip. And definitely with a spare pair of socks lined in felt. Just as you start to doze off, you hear a soft sound. Singing, not from the caravan, not from anyone nearby. It's coming from beyond the rocks, your eyes open. And suddenly you're wide awake again. The desert night keeps its secrets close, but it never stays quiet. The faint singing, soft, haunting, pulls you out of sleep like a cool breeze through the heat. You sit up, squinting toward the distant dunes where the moonlight barely touches. Who's singing? A spirit? A lost traveler? Or just the desert playing tricks on your tired brain? It could be a desert nomad, you think. Nomads have been wandering these sands for millennia, living in tune with the land and the stars. They travel light, carrying only what they truly need, moving with the rhythm of the wind. Historians still argue whether the nomads were always enemies of the great Persian empires or occasional allies sharing secret roots and wisdom. The song grows louder, but it's not threatening, more like a lullaby or a prayer. You pull your cloak tighter. sitting by the dying fire, wondering if you should investigate or just let the night be. The others in camp remain oblivious, wrapped in their dreams or watch shifts. You recall an odd piece of fringe history. Some Persian travelers believed the desert was alive with unseen spirits called Peris, mischievous but sometimes helpful, beings who could guide or mislead wanderers. The singing could be one of them, or so the old stories say. As you debate, your fingers unconsciously trace the outline of your water skin. Water, after all, is the lifeblood of any desert journey. The Persians were masters of water management, building qanats, underground channels, that brought water to the driest places. You have no qanat here, just your skin and your hope it holds enough for the night. The desert air carries a scent of crushed sage and something faintly metallic, like distant thunder, or maybe the earth's own breath. You take a deep breath and remind yourself that survival is about more than just stuff. It's about reading the land, listening to it. Not every sound is a threat. Sometimes it's a message. You think back to the unexpected items you packed. Your herbal sachets, mixtures of lavender, mint, and crushed dates, were meant to calm nerves. Turns out they work, as the scent mingles with the desert air, wrapping around you like a soft blanket. Suddenly a sharp rustle from behind the tents makes you spin around. Nothing, just a tumbleweed bouncing away. You laugh softly. Your imagination is playing desert tricks again. Then you remember the odd, practical fact that ancient Persians often carried dried crocodile dung, crushed and mixed with oils, as sunscreen and insect repellent. You don't have that, thankfully, but the desert's harshness isn't always obvious. You settle back by the fire, letting the song fade into the night. It's a reminder that the desert, for all its barrenness, is full of life, stories, and mysteries waiting just beyond the dunes. As your eyes close, the camp around you
Hums with soft breathing and the occasional camel grumble.
The desert night stretches on, endless and patient, and you realize maybe the most important thing you packed wasn't your sword, your water, or your food, but your willingness to listen. The sun breaks over the horizon like a slow-burning promise, casting golden fingers across the sand and waking you from restless sleep. You stretch, joints cracking like ancient parchment, and squint toward the caravan stirring around you. The cool night has fled, replaced by a sharp heat that already threatens to make your skin prick with sweat. Morning in the desert isn't gentle, it's a slap in the face with a sandy glove. You swing your legs off the mat, barefoot on the rough ground, feeling the uneven texture bite into your soles. That's the price you pay for not packing those felt-lined sandals last night, remember them? Felt sandals might sound like a questionable fashion choice, but they actually do wonders protecting feet from the blistering sand, a little-known but genuine ancient Persian trick. Historians still argue whether the felt was originally a nomadic innovation or adapted later by settled Persians for desert treks. But the logic is undeniable. Breakfast is a modest affair. Leftover flatbread, with crushed dates and a handful of dried figs. The figs are sticky with sweetness, a small luxury that makes your dry mouth happy. You savor the moment because you know the day ahead will demand everything you've got. Your water skin is almost empty. You rationed poorly last night, nervous and thirsty, so you decide to refill at the next oasis. Oases are rare treasures in the desert, shimmering mirages, sometimes real, sometimes illusion. Ancient Persians valued them so much that some caravan routes were planned strictly around these water points, ensuring survival in a land that otherwise offered nothing but heat and sand. You check your gear. The leather pouch with spikenard is tucked safely away. The bronze mirror glints in the morning sun, and your ink scroll remains untouched. You wonder briefly if you should have practiced writing last night, but then decide that desert survival trumps poetry. Packing up the camp, you notice something odd. The camel you thought you saddled is missing a bit of its saddle cloth. Maybe the mischievous Peri spirits were at it again, or more likely, a hungry desert rat. Small desert creatures have a reputation for stealing unattended food or gear. There's even a fringe tale about desert rats carrying messages between tribes. But historians remain skeptical. As you tighten your belt and secure your water skin, the caravan leader gathers everyone. His voice is calm but firm. There's a storm brewing and you'll need to move fast. Desert storms are no joke. They can turn soft sand into flying knives, strip tents from their poles, and blind even the most seasoned traveler. You recall reading that ancient Persians developed early wind shelters made from interlaced palm fronds and animal hides, offering minimal protection but enough to save lives. Whether those shelters were used on this route is still debated by scholars. You glance around at the other travelers. Some are ready, faces set like stone, others look tired and uncertain. You realize that survival isn't just about what you pack. It's about how you adapt. The desert demands flexibility. As the caravan sets out, the wind picks up, scattering grains of sand like tiny stars. You pull your scarf over your mouth
and nose, feeling the harsh embrace of the desert morning. Your journey continues, every step forward a story written in sweat and sand. The desert wind bites now, whipping past your ears and stinging any skin left uncovered.
You tuck your scarf tighter around your face, feeling the grains of sand scrape lightly against your lips. It's the kind of wind that makes you appreciate even the simplest piece of cloth, no matter how scratchy or worn. You remember why you packed that thick wool cloak, your oldest, most trusted companion on these journeys. Ancient Persians prized wool not just for warmth, but because it could also breathe, making it surprisingly versatile against desert heat and cold. Historians still argue whether the wool came from local sheep breeds or imported animals bred especially for desert conditions, but it's clear the material was invaluable. Your camels plod steadily, their padded feet leaving soft impressions in the sand that vanish almost as quickly as they appear. These creatures are the true desert warriors, bred and trained for endurance and stamina. You briefly recall an obscure fact. Persian camels were sometimes painted with natural dyes, red, blue, or yellow, to mark ownership or as talismans for protection. Whether this practice was widespread or more ceremonial remains a topic of debate among scholars. The caravan moves with a rhythm, slow and steady, with the occasional grunt from the camels and murmurs among travelers. You reach into your satchel and pull out the small clay jar filled with rosewater. A luxury, yes, but also practical. Rosewater was used as a cooling mist and to mask the smell of sweat. You spritz some on your wrists and neck, feeling a brief, refreshing relief. The scent lingers, a fragrant rebellion against the desert's harshness. Lunch is a quick affair. A handful of roasted chickpeas and dried apricots. They stick to your teeth but fuel your tired muscles. Ancient Persians were pioneers in food preservation, inventing techniques like drying and fermenting that allowed travelers to carry sustenance through long journeys. Historians still argue whether these methods evolved primarily for military campaigns or trading expeditions. Your thoughts wander to the small brass compass you packed, a relatively new invention in your time but invaluable for navigating vast, featureless deserts. Yet sometimes you wonder if over-reliance on instruments takes away from the skill of reading the sun and stars, a skill your ancestors held sacred. Desert nomads trusted the stars as guides, and their knowledge of constellations was both practical and spiritual.
As the heat intensifies, you notice your throat dry and your steps slow. The oasis must be close, you hope. The thought of fresh water is almost intoxicating. You also remember to apply a bit of the strange crocodile dung mixture on your face again. It sounds ridiculous, but it really worked as a sunscreen, protecting against the blistering sun and repelling biting insects. Few outsiders believed it, and historians still debate the origins and efficacy of this peculiar, ancient remedy. The horizon shimmers ahead, a mirage, or is it real? The caravan quickens pace, anticipation rippling through the group like electricity. You brace yourself. The desert's greatest gift is water, and it demands respect. That shimmering oasis you spotted earlier? It's no mirage. As you draw closer, the palms come into focus, tall, graceful sentinels, bending slightly in the breeze. The sweet promise of water and shade sends a ripple of relief through the caravan, and your pace quickens as if your legs remember the feeling of coolness better than your mind does. You drop your pack near a cluster of date palms and step barefoot into the cool, muddy edge of the water. The sensation is a shock after hours on baking sand, mud squelching between your toes, water lapping softly against your ankles. This oasis isn't just a rest stop, it's a sanctuary. The ancient Persians regarded oases as sacred spaces, sometimes even dedicating small shrines nearby to the god Ahura Mazda, protector of life and order. Historians still argue whether these shrines were widespread or mostly reserved for major trade routes, but the reverence is clear. You take a deep breath, the scent of wet earth and palm leaves filling your lungs, calming your racing heart. Nearby, someone draws water into a leather skin, careful to avoid stirring up sediment. Water skins made from goat or camel hide were a necessity. You can't carry enough water in pottery jars, and pottery would break too easily on such rugged journeys. A fringe tidbit: some travelers would line their water skins with crushed herbs like mint or basil to freshen the water and keep mosquitoes at bay, which sounds like a luxury, but might just save you from a nasty bite or two. While you fill your own water skin, you spot a few hardy desert flowers clinging to life near the oasis, bright splashes of purple and yellow in the otherwise monochrome landscape. The Persians had a deep appreciation for nature's stubbornness. Gardens and greenery symbolized paradise and hope. This little patch of life in the desert feels like a living metaphor. You notice the caravan leader talking with an older nomad, a man whose skin is leathered and eyes sharp like a hawk's. They exchange maps and directions, discussing the best path forward. Navigation was always tricky. Shifting sands could swallow footprints overnight, erasing your trail completely. Historians still argue whether the ancient Persians had a formalized system for desert navigation or relied mostly on oral traditions and natural landmarks. Your stomach grumbles, reminding you to eat. You break out some dried meat and a handful of walnuts, feeling the richness fill you. The nomad offers you a taste of salty cheese made from goat's milk, a treat rare in the desert, but treasured. You savor the taste, tangy and creamy, a reminder that even the harshest environments provide moments of pleasure. As the caravan rests, you dip your hands into the cool water, splashing your face and neck. The water washes away the dust and grime of the journey, renewing your spirit. You catch your reflection in the water, a sunburnt face framed by windswept hair, eyes tired but determined. You settle under a palm's shade and watch the oasis life quietly buzz around you, the soft rustle of palm fronds, the distant calls of birds, the gentle lapping of water. For a moment, the desert seems less a vast emptiness and more a hidden world full of life and secrets. You lean back, thankful you packed light enough to make it this far
but heavy enough to survive. The desert isn't just a place to endure, it's a place to learn. The sun climbs higher, and the oasis begins to shimmer with heat, the cool refuge turning into a furnace by midday. You know it's time to move on, but before you go, the caravan leader reminds everyone to take care to leave no trace. The desert is fragile despite its harshness, and even the smallest human footprint can last for years, disrupting fragile ecosystems. This environmental awareness was something ancient Persians practiced, albeit more instinctively than scientifically, seeing the desert as a living entity to be respected. Historians still argue whether this reverence influenced early environmental ethics or was purely pragmatic survival. As you break camp, you grab your trusty bronze mirror, compact, lightweight, and indispensable. It's more than a grooming tool, it doubles as a signaling device if needed. You reflect on how ancient Persians were among the first to craft mirrors polished from polished metals like bronze and even silver, far before glass mirrors became common. Fringe tales suggest some mirrors were even used in rituals to ward off evil spirits or bad luck, though scholars debate the prevalence of such practices. The caravan starts moving again, the camels steadily crunching over sun-baked sand. The path ahead is long and unforgiving. You pull out a small bundle of frankincense, the precious resin carried carefully all the way from southern Arabia. You light a bit, the aromatic smoke swirling into the air, calming your nerves. The scent is familiar, comforting, a fragrant reminder of home and hearth. Ancient Persians valued frankincense both for religious ceremonies and practical uses, including natural insect repellent, a crucial defense against desert pests. Your thoughts drift to the topic of shelter. You unpack your lightweight tent made from woven camel hair, a fabric tough enough to shield against sandstorms and reflective enough to keep heat at bay during the day. This material's insulating properties were a Persian desert innovation, blending practicality with the resourcefulness demanded by such extreme environments. Historians still argue whether the tent design was purely functional or also incorporated spiritual symbolism. You crawl inside your tent and feel the instant relief of shade and cooler air. It's a small bubble of calm in a world ruled by relentless sun and shifting sands. You roll out your sleeping mat made from woven reeds, its texture rough but comforting against your skin. The caravan settles for a midday rest. Some travelers close their eyes, others check their supplies. You unwrap a small pouch of dried mulberries, sweet, tart, and energizing, perfect for a quick snack. As you lie back and listen to the soft whisper of the desert wind brushing against your tent, you realize the desert is teaching you patience and respect. It's not just about what you bring, but how you use it and honor the land. Your thoughts wander to the stars that will soon emerge, guides, stories, and mysteries, all wrapped in the night sky. As the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the vast sky with streaks of burnt orange and purple, you step out of your tent to greet the evening chill. The desert cools rapidly now. The scorching heat of the day gives way to a crispness that nips at exposed skin. You pull your wool cloak closer, a versatile piece you've come to trust for these temperature swings. Ancient Persians were experts in layering, combining fabrics to adapt seamlessly from blistering heat to freezing nights. Historians still argue whether layering customs evolved more from climate necessity or cultural fashion statements. You pause to look at the sky, noticing the first stars prickling through the twilight. The desert night sky is a vast tapestry, and the Persians named many constellations we still recognize today, like Orion, known as the Hunter, though their interpretations often carried different mythologies and stories. Fringe theories suggest some constellations may have been mapped for navigation or ritual purposes, but this remains a lively debate among scholars. Around the campfire, the caravan begins preparing dinner. You unpack a small iron cooking pot, prized for its durability, and set it over the flickering flames. The meal will be simple: stew made from lentils, dried herbs, and whatever preserved vegetables are left. Ancient Persians were culinary pioneers, blending spices and ingredients from across their vast empire, turning humble rations into hearty, flavorful dishes. Historians still argue whether certain spice blends were developed for taste or medicinal purposes. As the stew simmers, you take out your dried bread, a tough, flat variety baked thin to last long journeys. You nibble on a piece, its dryness softened by the stew's warmth. The bread, known as nane sangak, was a staple for desert travelers, often baked on hot stones, hence its name. The fire crackles and sparks rise, carrying your thoughts to stories told under similar skies centuries ago. Travelers would share tales of heroic kings, mythical beasts, and distant lands, weaving history and legend into the fabric of night. You feel the pull of those stories, their power to connect generations through time and space. Nearby, someone pulls out a small reed flute and begins playing a soft melody, the notes drifting across the desert. Music was not just entertainment for ancient Persians, but a spiritual practice believed to harmonize human souls with the cosmos. As you listen, you think about the journey ahead, the miles still to cover, the challenges that await. The desert is an unforgiving teacher, but also a keeper of secrets and stories, all waiting to be discovered by those patient enough to listen. The night deepens, and the fire's glow flickers against your tired face as you lie back on your woven
reed mat. The stars overhead are sharper now, diamonds scattered on velvet. You pull your cloak tighter and think about how ancient Persians measured time by these very stars, using them not only to navigate, but to mark festivals and rituals.
The famous Persian calendar, one of the oldest, was closely tied to solar and lunar cycles. Historians still argue about how precisely it was synchronized in the earliest days. You remember the small astrolabe you packed, a clever instrument, made of brass and ivory, used to measure the height of stars and the sun. It's surprisingly lightweight and complicated, a masterpiece of ancient engineering. Fringe historians speculate that the astrolabe was not just scientific, but might have held symbolic or magical significance, though this remains debated. The night is quiet except for the occasional grunt from a camel settling in and the soft rustle of tents. The desert's vastness presses gently against your senses, a reminder of your smallness in the grand scheme. You think about how the desert was both a barrier and a bridge, cutting off some from the world, but connecting others through trade routes like the Royal Road, famously constructed under the Persian Empire to speed communication and commerce. Your thoughts shift to the waterskins drying near the fire. You recall that ancient Persians developed early forms of water conservation, including qanats, ingenious underground channels that brought water from mountains to arid plains. This technology revolutionized desert travel and settlement, and historians still argue about the exact origins and spread of qanats across the region. A gentle breeze brings the scent of dried herbs, thyme, and savory that someone crushed near the fire. You add some to your tea, brewed from wild mountain plants you gathered along the way. The bitterness grounds you, a reminder that even in the harshest places, life finds ways to flourish. As your eyelids grow heavy, you think about the day's packing lessons, the wool cloak, the clay jar of rosewater, the camel hair tent, the iron cooking pot. Each item is a piece of a larger puzzle, a survival kit crafted by thousands of years of trial, error, and ingenuity. You close your eyes, the desert night whispering lullabies older than empires. You awaken to the first pale light, brushing the horizon, the desert cool and silent except for the distant call of a desert fox. The coolness is brief, a fleeting gift before the sun awakens fully, ready to reclaim its reign. You stretch and unwrap yourself from your wool cloak, appreciating its warmth, but relieved to step into the fresh morning air. Ancient Persians valued dawn as a sacred time, a moment of renewal and spiritual cleansing. Historians still argue whether early Persian rituals at sunrise influenced neighboring cultures or vice versa. You check your supplies carefully, mindful that any miscalculation in the desert can be costly. The scent of your preserved figs and dates comforts you, a sweet but practical fuel. You think about how dates were not just food but symbols of hospitality and prosperity in Persian culture. Fringe accounts tell of travelers exchanging dates as peace offerings, though the extent of this tradition is debated. As the caravan stirs to life, you break out your trusty sun hat, woven palm fronds shaped into a wide brim to shield your face and neck from the brutal sun. This humble headgear, a staple for desert travelers, was adapted by ancient Persians who understood the relentless power of the midday sun. They also employed a special face covering, the patu, a cloth veil, that shielded skin from sand and sunburn. Scholars still debate whether this practice was widespread or limited to specific desert tribes. Before setting out, you perform a quick check on your water skins, now filled and fresh from the oasis. You sip cautiously, remembering that water is life, and carrying too little can mean disaster. Camels carry extra, but humans have to ration their own. The Persians developed some of the earliest water rationing laws for desert caravans, a practice that ensured survival and discipline. As you mount your camel, you feel the steady, rhythmic sway under you, a slow dance with an animal built for this environment. Camels were not just transportation, they were companions, lifelines, and sometimes even sources of milk and wool. Their unique physiology lets them go days without water, and you marvel at this natural miracle. The caravan moves forward, the trail marked by faint hoofprints and the occasional crushed shrub. You think about the many travelers who passed here before you, traders, warriors, priests, each with their own reasons and stories. Ahead, the desert stretches endlessly, but you're ready, packed with ancient wisdom and modern grit. The caravan's slow rhythm carries you deeper into the desert, the landscape shifting from endless sand dunes to rocky outcrops and sparse scrub. You pause to examine the ground beneath your feet, scattered shards of obsidian, volcanic glass that ancient Persians prized not only as tools, but as mystical objects believed to ward off evil. Historians still argue whether obsidian was primarily a practical resource or held deeper symbolic meaning in their culture. As you rest by a large boulder, you unpack a small leather pouch filled with coal, the dark powder used as eyeliner and sun shield. Coal was a staple for many desert dwellers, protecting eyes from the glare and believed to have medicinal properties. Interestingly, some fringe theories suggest coal was also used in rituals, but the extent of this remains debated. Nearby, a few travelers gather around a portable water clock, a primitive yet ingenious device designed to measure time using the steady drip of water. The Persian Empire was among the first to develop sophisticated timekeeping tools, essential for organizing caravan schedules and prayers. Historians still debate whether these water clocks were accurate enough for precise timekeeping or mostly symbolic. You sip from your skin of cool water, grateful for the brief respite. You pull out a small scroll wrapped in waxed linen, letters and maps from merchants far away. Literacy was more common among Persian traders than one might expect, and these messages carried vital news and instructions across the empire. as you tuck the scroll away, your mind drifts to the spices packed in your pouch: sumac, cumin, and coriander. These flavors not only added zest to your meals but had preservative qualities. Ancient Persians were pioneers of the spice trade, which spread these precious goods from India to the Mediterranean. Some scholars argue about the extent to which spices influenced Persian cuisine versus neighboring cultures. You glance up at the sun, now climbing high, signaling it's time to move. The desert seems to hold its breath, waiting for your next step. Your camel shifts impatiently, and you ready yourself for another stretch of this vast, unforgiving journey. The heat rises again, wrapping around you like a thick blanket as the midday sun bakes the desert floor. You wipe sweat from your brow, thankful for the wide-brimmed hat shielding your face, but you know it's not enough. Ancient Persians learned to use more than just fabric. They created a kind of natural sunscreen from crocodile dung mixed with oils and ash. Charming, right? Historians still argue whether this concoction was truly effective or just an unfortunate necessity. Either way, it beats turning into a roasted kebab under the relentless sun. You glance at your camel's sturdy legs as it strides ahead, hooves crunching on the gravelly terrain. Camels were the ultimate desert machines, able to store fat in their humps and tolerate water loss that would knock out most creatures. You think about how Persian caravans relied on these animals, not only for transport, but also for their milk, and even as a source of clothing fiber. Fringe scholars speculate that some camels might have been selectively bred for desert endurance earlier than mainstream timelines suggest, but the evidence is thin. Pulling your pack closer, you check the clay water jar, its cool surface a relief against your hand. The Persians often coated the outside with a thin layer of rosewater or other fragrant oils, partly to mask the scent of water to thieves and partly for its soothing aroma. Some historians debate if this practice was widespread or limited to royalty and nobility. You take a small sip, careful not to gulp, rationing every drop. The desert's dryness feels like it could suck the moisture right out of your lungs. You remember your dried fruit stash, dates, figs, and apricots, a sweet contrast to the bitter grit of the environment. Ancient Persians prized these fruits for their high energy content and long shelf life, making them ideal for desert travel. Suddenly a gust of hot wind kicks up sand, stinging your eyes. You pull out your patu face veil just in time, wrapping it snugly to block the abrasive particles. This simple cloth saved countless travelers from painful sandstorms, a vital piece of gear often overlooked. Historians still debate how widely used these veils were among different Persian tribes. You glance around at the others, each clad in similarly practical but distinct layers: cotton tunics, leather sandals, and wool wraps. Their clothing speaks volumes about the harsh environment and the sophisticated cultural responses it demanded. The desert isn't just a challenge, it's a teacher, and every item you carry is a lesson in survival. As the sun starts its slow descent, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, you pause to prepare the evening meal. You unpack your iron cooking pot, heavy but indispensable, one of the many practical items Persians carried into the desert. This pot has seen centuries of improvement, and ancient Persian blacksmiths were renowned for their skill, creating durable, rust-resistant cookware. Historians still argue whether these early pots were forged locally or imported from neighboring regions like Mesopotamia. You light a small fire using dried twigs and crushed resin from local shrubs, the smoky scent mingling with the fading daylight. The resin, sticky and aromatic, burns hot and long, perfect for cooking and warding off pesky desert insects. Fringe. Theories suggest resin was sometimes used in ritualistic fires, though it's unclear how widespread this practice was. While the water boils, you pull out a small bundle of dried herbs, thyme, coriander, and a pinch of saffron that prized Persian gold. Saffron was not just a spice but a symbol of wealth and status, and its cultivation in Persia is among the oldest known. Scholars still debate whether saffron's use in cooking originated in Persia or neighboring regions. You toss in some dried meat, rehydrated slowly over the simmering water, and the rich aroma fills the air, mingling with the warmth of the fire. Ancient Persians often salted and dried their meat to preserve it for long journeys, and you appreciate the combination of flavors and preservation methods. As you wait, you lean back and glance at the horizon, where the last light clings to the jagged silhouettes of distant mountains. The desert's chill starts to creep in, a sharp contrast to the day's heat. You pull your wool cloak tighter, grateful for its weight and warmth. Nearby, other travelers unpack similar meals, the quiet murmur of their voices blending with the crackling fire. There's a communal rhythm here, a sense of shared hardship and camaraderie. You sip your fragrant tea brewed from wild herbs, a calming ritual that settles your mind and body. The simple act connects you to thousands of desert travelers before you, each facing the same elemental challenge. Night falls fully, and the stars return, brighter and more numerous than before, watching silently as you prepare to rest. The desert night grows colder, the warmth of the fire fighting a losing battle against the creeping chill. You wrap yourself tighter in your wool cloak, the rough fabric comforting against your skin. Ancient Persians prized wool not only for warmth, but also for its water-resistant properties, perfect for those sudden, rare desert rains. Historians still argue whether Persian shepherding practices developed independently or were influenced by nomadic tribes. You reach for your leather-bound satchel containing your evening reading, a collection of Persian poetry, verses from Rumi and Hafez, penned centuries after the empire but rooted in traditions born here. Poetry was more than art. It was a companion on long journeys, a mental escape from the harsh physical world. Fringe historians speculate that some early verses were actually coded messages for traders or spies, but evidence is scant. As you turn the fragile pages by the firelight, the scent of burning sandalwood incense wafts through the air. Persians used sandalwood not just for its aroma, but believed it had purifying properties, helping travelers ward off bad luck. Scholars still debate the spiritual significance versus its purely practical uses. Your camel snores softly nearby, a comforting reminder that life continues even here. You think about the complex relationships between humans and animals in the desert, mutual dependence that shaped culture and survival. Camels were revered, sometimes even given names and treated like family. A sudden rustle in the sand draws your attention. A desert hare, its eyes gleaming in the firelight, pauses briefly before bounding away. Small creatures like this were part of the desert ecosystem that ancient Persians knew intimately, understanding which plants and animals were edible or dangerous. Historians still argue about the extent to which desert dwellers exploited these resources sustainably. You sip the last of your tea and close your book, your mind drifting between the stars and the ancient verses. Tomorrow promises more miles, more heat, more challenges. But for now, the desert night holds you gently in its vast, quiet embrace. The chill of dawn seeps through your wool cloak as you stir awake, the horizon just beginning to glow with tentative light. You roll out your simple reed sleeping mat, a lightweight portable invention that was a staple among desert travelers. Ancient Persians wove these mats from locally harvested reeds and palm fibers, creating a breathable surface that helped regulate temperature during cold nights and hot days. Historians still argue whether these mats were used primarily for comfort or had ritualistic significance in rest and prayer. You stretch your limbs, feeling the stiffness of yesterday's long trek slowly ease. You glance over at your small bundle of personal effects, a carved bone comb, a few coins minted with the image of Cyrus the Great, and a small pouch of dried rose petals. The rose petals weren't just a luxury, they were used for their fragrance and believed to have calming properties during rest. Fringe accounts suggest that some travelers even brewed rosewater to refresh their skin and spirits, though the exact origins of this practice remain debated. The morning air carries the faint scent of desert thyme and wild lavender, fragrant herbs that dot the landscape and were prized for their medicinal uses. Ancient Persian healers were adept at using local flora to treat common ailments, a knowledge passed down through generations. Scholars continue to debate how much of this herbal lore was shared across cultures through trade versus developed independently. You prepare a quick breakfast, mixing crushed dates with ground barley flour to make a simple flatbread, an energy-dense start to the day. Bread baking in the desert might seem like a luxury, but ancient Persians mastered methods to cook with limited water and fuel. Historians still argue over whether their baking techniques influenced early Mediterranean recipes. Packing up your camp, you secure your belongings with practiced efficiency. Every item, from your water skins to your wool cloak, has a place. There's no room for excess in this environment. The desert demands discipline, a lesson the Persians learned well, building one of the largest empires of the ancient world on the backbone of such meticulous logistics. As the caravan stirs and the camels prepare to rise, you take a deep breath, ready to face another day beneath the vast Persian sky. The caravan resumes its steady pace, the clopping of camel hooves rhythmically echoing across the barren expanse. You clutch your walking stick, carved from desert willow, flexible yet sturdy, perfect for both support and warding off curious desert critters. Ancient Persians regarded such sticks as symbols of authority and protection. Some were even intricately decorated. Historians still argue how much ornamentation was practical versus purely ceremonial. Your mind wanders to the scent of frankincense and myrrh tucked carefully in your pack. These resins were valuable trade commodities, often used in religious ceremonies and as fragrant offerings. The trade routes that carried these precious materials also transported ideas and culture, making the desert more than just a physical barrier. Fringe historians suggest secret trade networks that predate documented Silk Road activity, though this remains contentious. You adjust your leather sandals, feeling the rough terrain beneath. Persian footwear was surprisingly advanced, designed to protect feet while allowing ventilation in the scorching heat. Some archaeological finds show evidence of intricate stitching and layered soles. Scholars debate whether these designs influenced later Roman and Greek styles or developed independently. Ahead, a fellow traveler shares a simple, dried cheese snack, a yultisa, salty, tangy treat made from fermented goat's milk, ideal for the journey. Dairy preservation was an essential skill among desert dwellers, and the Persians had methods involving drying and salting that kept food edible for weeks. Historians still debate the origins of these techniques and their spread across the region. Suddenly, you notice a strange, shimmering mirage on the horizon, a flickering illusion that always teases the thirsty traveler. It's a cruel reminder that the desert can trick even the most experienced. You recall a quirky tidbit. Some desert travelers carried small mirrors not just to signal other caravans, but to confuse animals or even enemies by reflecting sunlight in unexpected ways. You smile faintly, thinking that no matter how far technology Advances, some age-old challenges remain the same, keeping your wits and your water close. By midday, the heat swells again, pressing down like an invisible weight. You pull your linen scarf tighter around your neck and mouth, the fine weave filtering the gritty air. This humble scarf, often dyed with indigo or saffron, was a Persian staple, practical and symbolic. Some historians suggest it signified tribal affiliation or social status, though this remains debated. Your thoughts drift to the salted fish jerky tucked inside your pack, an unusual but long-lasting protein source. Fish was more commonly consumed near the Persian Gulf, but trade brought it inland where preservation was key. Fringe archaeological finds have unearthed fish bones in desert settlements, suggesting surprising dietary adaptations. As you rest briefly, you unroll a small map, a parchment inscribed with ink made from crushed minerals and plant extracts. Ancient Persian cartography was surprisingly detailed, focusing on trade routes and oasis locations rather than geographic accuracy. Scholars still debate the extent to which these maps influenced later Greek and Roman geography. You spot a falcon perched atop a distant rock, its keen eyes scanning the desert. Falconry was an elite sport and hunting method, cherished in Persian culture. Some fringe historians argue falconry rituals had spiritual significance, connecting humans with divine power. You sip from your water skin, feeling the cool liquid revive your parched throat. Water was precious, and ancient Persians developed sophisticated qanat irrigation systems to tap underground sources, enabling settlements even in arid regions. Historians still argue about how quickly these technologies spread and who first invented them. The desert sun beats down, relentless and unforgiving, but with every careful step and well-packed item, you embody the resilience that shaped an empire. The late afternoon brings a subtle shift. The air cools just enough to ease your burden, but the desert still demands your respect. You adjust your camel's harness, noting the intricately tooled leather straps adorned with small bronze bells. These bells served a dual purpose, signaling your caravan's approach and scaring away wild animals. Historians still debate whether such adornments also had spiritual protections woven into their designs. You pull out a small clay oil lamp, filling its reservoir with sesame oil, another Persian innovation. This lamp has been your constant companion for nights spent under starry skies. Fringe theories suggest oil lamps were also used in secret desert ceremonies, but conclusive evidence is thin. Your thoughts wander to the aromatic spices tucked in. Your pack, cumin, coriander, and a pinch of sumac, used to flavor your meals and believed to aid digestion during long journeys. Persian cuisine was already sophisticated, even in these harsh conditions. Scholars continue to discuss the origins of certain spices in Persian cooking and their spread along trade routes. Nearby, a fellow traveler offers a sweet fig, its sticky flesh a brief delight against the dry backdrop. Figs were common desert fruits, sometimes dried to last for months. Their cultivation and trade were well established in ancient Persia. As twilight approaches, the shadows lengthen and the desert's otherworldly quiet deepens. You think back to the intricate silk robes you wore in city markets, now replaced by durable desert linens. This contrast between urban luxury and desert pragmatism reveals the complexity of Persian life. Your camel shifts beneath you, restless but steady. You tighten your cloak, ready to settle for the night once more, feeling the rhythm of the desert pulse softly beneath the stars. Night deepens around your camp, and the sky unfurls a tapestry of stars brighter than any city light could match. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling the desert's chill begin to creep in. Ancient Persians were avid stargazers, using celestial bodies for navigation, and even astrology, a practice that still fascinates scholars who argue about its true influence on Persian decision-making. You light your small fire carefully, coaxing flame from your flint and steel. Fire-starting kits were vital tools, but some fringe historians believe certain fires had ritualistic purposes beyond mere warmth and cooking. As the fire crackles, you prepare a simple stew from dried lentils and wild onions, the aroma mingling with the scent of burning cedar wood. Persian cooks mastered flavor even with limited ingredients, showing culinary creativity born from necessity. You reach for a small vial of rose water, a fragrant luxury that soothes the skin and calms the mind. This floral essence had multiple uses, from perfuming garments to ceremonial cleansing. Scholars still debate how rose water became so embedded in Persian culture, trade, spirituality, both. A soft breeze carries the distant howl of a desert fox, a reminder that you share this vast wilderness with countless creatures, some friendly, others less so. Your wool cloak is your shield tonight, but the desert's secrets remain as elusive as ever. You lie back on your reed mat, letting the cool night air fill your lungs, and feel yourself drifting towards sleep, safe, for now, among the dunes and stars. The first light of dawn spills over the dunes, softening the rugged edges of the desert. You wake to the familiar scent of burnt cedar and fresh earth, feeling the warmth slowly return to your chilled limbs. Ancient Persians believed the dawn held spiritual significance, a daily renewal gifted by Ahura Mazda, their god of light and wisdom. Historians still debate how deeply these religious beliefs influenced everyday travelers like yourself. You unpack your small water flask, savoring each cool sip. This simple vessel, often made from animal bladders or pottery, was a lifeline. Fringe scholars propose that some travelers even lined their flasks with herbs to purify the water, though direct evidence remains elusive. Your camel's breath forms little clouds in the crisp morning air as it nuzzles the sparse desert brush. The camel's role as a desert companion was more than utilitarian. It was woven into the very fabric of Persian society and economy. Scholars continue to explore how camel domestication transformed trade routes and settlement patterns. You prepare a small breakfast, dates mashed with roasted barley, pressed into compact cakes for energy on the road. Barley was a staple grain, hardy enough to survive the desert's harsh climate. Some historians argue whether barley cultivation spread westward from Persia or developed independently in several regions. As the caravan stirs, the desert seems to hold its breath, awaiting the day's journey. You feel a quiet connection to the countless travelers before you, all bound by the same ancient rhythms of survival and hope. The morning sun climbs higher, casting long shadows over the rocky terrain. You wrap your turban tighter, shielding your scalp from the relentless heat. Persian headgear was not only functional but often decorated with beads and embroidery, a subtle sign of status even in the wilderness. Historians still debate whether these decorations were widespread or reserved for nobility. Your pack jingles lightly, a small collection of copper coins nestled inside a leather pouch. Currency was essential for trade at desert oases and caravanserais, those legendary roadside inns offering rest and replenishment. Fringe accounts speculate that some coins doubled as tokens for secret guilds or trade agreements, though proof remains scant. You pull out a small, carved wooden box containing crushed lapis lazuli powder. This deep blue mineral was prized across Persia for jewelry and pigment, symbolizing royalty and the heavens. Scholars continue to debate the trade routes that brought lapis from Afghanistan to Persian artisans. Nearby you hear the tinkling laughter of children
at a distant settlement, a reminder that life pulses even at the edge of the desert. The settlement relies heavily on qanat irrigation, a marvel of engineering allowing water to flow underground, preserving precious surface moisture. Historians still argue about the exact origins and spread of qanat technology. As the heat intensifies, you sip sparingly from your water skin and consider the paradox of the desert, a place of scarcity and abundance, harshness and beauty, danger and refuge. Your journey presses on, guided by the sun, the stars, and the enduring spirit of the Persian traveler. The sun reaches its zenith, and you pause beneath a sparse acacia tree, its thorns prickling through your thin linen robe. The tree's deep roots tap into groundwater unseen, a natural oasis in this sea of sand. Ancient Persians revered certain desert trees, often linking them to myth or divine protection. Scholars still debate how much these beliefs affected travel decisions versus practical survival. You rummage through your pack for the small jar of sour yogurt, strained and preserved for long journeys. Dairy products were tricky in the desert. Heat, but fermented yogurt offered essential nutrients and a cooling effect. Fringe theories suggest that some nomads used yogurt as a wound dressing, although this is far from confirmed. Your fingers brush over the small obsidian knife strapped to your belt, a sharp tool vital for daily tasks, from preparing food to carving wood. Obsidian was valued for its sharpness, even if it chipped easily. Historians continue to discuss whether obsidian tools persisted alongside bronze or vanished quickly as metallurgy spread. Nearby, a traveler shares stories of strange desert lights, will-o'-the-wisps or mirages, depending on who you ask. Such tales reflect how the desert's mysteries have long fueled imagination and caution. Fringe scholars explore possible scientific explanations like bioluminescence or methane ignitions, but nothing is conclusive. You chew on a small piece of dried pomegranate leather, sweet with a hint of tartness, another cleverly preserved fruit from Persian orchards. The resourcefulness of these travelers is a constant reminder that life in the desert demands creativity and respect for the environment. The afternoon sun begins its slow descent, painting the desert with golden hues that soften the harsh landscape. You adjust the bundles on your camel, making sure everything is secure before the final leg of your journey to the next oasis. Camel caravans were the lifeblood of Persian trade, with routes stretching thousands of miles, connecting distant cities and cultures. Historians still argue how much these networks influenced the rise and fall of empires. Your hand brushes over a small pouch of frankincense, its fragrant resin a precious commodity used for rituals and medicine. The incense's smoky aroma is said to purify the air and calm nerves, a small luxury on this arduous trek. Fringe accounts suggest frankincense was sometimes bartered for silk and spices far beyond Persian borders. You glance at the simple reed water pipe, used sparingly for tobacco or local herbs. Smoking was common among certain Persian classes, though opinions varied widely. Scholars continue to debate the social and religious significance of smoking in ancient Persia. You unwrap a cloth bundle, revealing a miniature woven carpet, an artistic marvel made by desert nomads. These carpets weren't just decorative, they marked tribal identity and served as practical bedding. The intricate patterns often told stories or encoded historical events, a subtle form of communication still puzzling scholars. The cool breeze picks up, carrying with it the distant sounds of market chatter and the faint scent of freshly baked flatbread. Your journey is almost over, but the desert's lessons linger of resilience, adaptation, and the enduring spirit of those who dared to cross it. As dusk settles, the desert's temperature drops swiftly, and the cool air stings your skin like tiny needles. You pull your wool cloak tighter, grateful for its weight and warmth.
Wool was a traveler's best friend, breathable yet insulating, a perfect material for the desert's extremes. Historians still debate how early Persians perfected the art of weaving such versatile textiles. You reach for a small pouch of dried saffron threads, their vibrant red, a prized spice used not only for flavor but also for dye and medicine. Saffron's value rivaled gold, often reserved for royalty or special occasions. Fringe theories propose that saffron might have had mystical uses in Persian rituals, though hard evidence is sparse. Near your feet, a small jar of musk lies carefully wrapped, used in perfumes and believed to have aphrodisiac properties. Musk harvesting is controversial even today, and ancient methods likely raised ethical questions unknown to modern scholars. This item's presence in your pack hints at the complexity of Persian trade and culture. The campfire flickers, throwing shadows that dance like spirits across the sand. Nearby, your fellow travelers hum a haunting melody, the kind passed down through generations, a lullaby for weary souls. Music was an integral part of Persian life, even in the desert's solitude. Scholars continue to explore how music influenced social bonding and mental resilience on long journeys. You lay back on your woven mat, the carpet's patterns glowing faintly under the moonlight. The desert night is alive with subtle sounds, a distant jackal, the rustle of your cloak, the crackling fire. You feel a profound sense of connection to those who traveled these lands before, their lives intertwined with the endless sands. The final night in the desert arrives with a serene quiet that blankets everything around you. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient dance, unchanged for millennia. You stretch out beneath the vast sky, feeling the cool sand mold softly beneath you. The desert's silence is a living thing, as much a companion as your camel or your pack. Ancient Persians saw the night desert as a time for reflection and storytelling, a pause between journeys. Historians still debate how much these moments shaped Persian identity and philosophy. You close your eyes and imagine the caravanserais, those welcoming stone refugees scattered across the trade routes. They were bustling centers of culture and commerce, places where travelers exchanged not only goods but stories, music, and news. Some fringe scholars suggest caravanserais also served secret political or religious functions, though evidence remains speculative. Your thoughts drift to the tools and treasures you've carried, the finely woven rugs, the fragrant spices, the sturdy blades. Each item is a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless spirit to explore and endure. It's clear the desert was no mere obstacle, but a crucible that shaped empires and individuals alike. You feel the cool night breeze, whisper promises of tomorrow's journey, of new horizons beyond the dunes. Slowly, your breathing deepens, sinking with the desert's timeless rhythm. The memories of your trek, the lessons of the ancient Persians, settle gently into your mind like a soft desert dawn. As your eyes grow heavier, the vastness of the desert seems to fold into a gentle embrace. The harsh sun, the shifting sands, and the biting cold all soften into distant echoes. Imagine the quiet whispers of the night breeze, carrying tales from countless travelers long gone, their footsteps etched forever in the sand. You rest now, wrapped in the comforting textures of your woven carpet and wool cloak, the scent of cedar and rose water lingering faintly. The desert's beauty is in its contradictions, life thriving amid barrenness, warmth found in cold, and silence filled with stories. Let these thoughts soothe you like a lullaby, slow and steady, until you drift into peaceful sleep. There is no rush here, only the steady, eternal rhythm of the desert night. Tomorrow the sun will rise again, bringing new challenges and wonders, but for now, You are safe. You carry the resilience of the ancient Persians within you, a quiet strength to face whatever comes next. So breathe deeply. Let your mind wander through starlit dunes and surrender to the calm. The desert watches over you, a silent guardian.
As your journey pauses, only to continue anew in dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.